So I wanted to ask John Scrumble if he knew who he was, since he did some. Yeah, it's just for the public comment, so you didn't have to memorize it.
Good morning. Call to order, Board of County Commissioners Workshop, March 10th, 2026. I will open public comment first. This portion of the agenda is designed to allow citizens an opportunity to bring matters to the attention of the board. At this time, the board will not engage in debate or answer questions. You may email askclay@claycountygov.com and staff will address your questions, or you may email your district commissioner. Public comment cards are conveniently placed at the meeting room entrance and should be submitted to the clerk on the left of the dais. You are to limit your comments to 3 minutes. Before addressing the board, please state your name and address. Now I would like to open the first public comment. Anyone? All right, close public comment, and we'll go to new business revenue projections.
Good morning, Commissioners. MJ is actually going to start off the first part of the workshop, and then I'll take over in the second half. Howard, do you have anything you want to lead with?
No, ma'am. Just we'll continue. Yep.
Good morning.
Morning.
Just wait on Troy here. Got her PowerPoint. All right. So we'll just first start off with what is a capital improvement plan. And so it's a multi-plan for the major capital expenditures of the county. Typically, it's a 5-year planning horizon. We want to focus on infrastructure, facilities, equipment. It really links the strategies or the strategic goal that the county's adopted to the financial capacity. And it's updated annually, so that's really what we're here today doing, is looking at that next year out to update the capital improvement plan. So the CIP development process, it really starts with a collaboration with the departments of them submitting in their requests and priorities. The cost estimates and project justification, so on their forms, they'll put out what that project estimate may be, and then the justification of where it hits on that priority list. The staff reviews and does a prioritization list, and then we look at what the revenue is and the debt capacity. And then, of course, we come to the board and we look at what those projects are, what the priorities are, and ask you to prioritize what those are and what should be following in that next year. Okay. Some of the revenue projections and funding sources that we have are going to be our sales and gas tax, grants, impact, and mobility fees, and of course our bond proceeds. So a revenue overview, you're going to see where our carry forward is at today and where it's projected at in the next 5 years. You'll see where our local gas tax option, this really stays relatively flat, kind of your electric vehicles versus growth. And then your sales tax. This sales tax number is going to be less your bond payments when you're looking at that. Yes.
That was, oh, I'm sorry, that was our bond issuance? Is that where the carry forward came from?
It wouldn't just be your bond, it would be
Well-
bond plus,
Plus, but
Yeah.
the disparity between 69 and 30 the following year was primarily due to the bond issue.
and the projection of you spending other revenue, your revenue down. I mean, if you look at the 6 year, basically, you're spending everything down.
Right,
And, yeah,
right,
but yes, sir.
from 69 to 5. That's just want to clarify that. Thank you.
Okay, next we get into our impact fees and what that revenue looks like. This slide's gonna show the revenue for the county parks, and just for public, the impact fees, they're a one-time charge that's assessed on new development to fund the capital cost of infrastructure required to serve that growth. So it's really the expansion. So when you look at impact fees, you've got each district here that's listed out as your impact fee district. This does not correlate with your commission district. It is different, so I just want to point that out. And so this is really the revenue going on from year one we have this year, and at year 6 is really the numbers we're looking at today. Yes, sir.
I have another quote, 45%?
So that 45% is really what the amount in the impact fee we can use out of there. The other portion is the 55% as we continue to move. Help me out here again.
Yeah, so basically when we did the impact fee study for parks specifically, they used your planning document that says, what are you supposed to have for the population you currently have for parks? Well, we are already at a deficit, so you can't charge that deficit to the new homeowners. You have to make that deficit up. So the 45% is a planning tool that we have, and we want to keep it in front of everybody that for every dollar that you bring in impact fees, we have to go get $1 out of CIP to match that, so that we're not burdening the new residences with the current deficit.
So 45% is just close to 50, okay?
Yeah.
Dollar for dollar.
Right, it's roughly dollar for dollar, but where your other impact fees, you don't have to really match them.
Right.
This one you do. We do have a percentage in there because it's the percentage that we're running that shows, when you see the other slides, you'll see a percentage. We don't have to match that, but that's kind of our understanding of how much impact fees is being used versus how much sales tax is being used in those other funds also. But this one, you have to do that by policy.
And the 5% is statutory reserve holdback?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, our next slide for impact fees, this is a revenue for non-park impact. So you'll see your regional park revenue, administration, constitutional and jail fund, the fire and rescue fund, your law enforcement fund, and libraries and culture. Okay. And then we have our mobility fee revenue also, showing again those different districts. So where the district collects the fee, that is where those monies and dollars have to be spent to expand that area for the growth. Any questions on those slides? Okay.
So I guess I get to take over the expenses side of this. We handed you out the big spreadsheet, which has every project. I just wanted you to have it because what we did in the slides is anything that did not have funding over the next 6 years, we removed. But I didn't want there to be confusion that we removed one of your projects off the list. So this list, we're not gonna use right now, but it does have every single project that you've asked us to put on the CIP over the last few years. But some of those projects have no funding for all 10 years, if that makes sense. So what we focused in on the slide deck is any project that actually has funding budgeted over the next 6 years. The key thing is your year 1 through 5 as illustrated is what you've already kind of locked in with your budget. Of course, the board can change that. And year 6, the orangish color column is the column we're adding, and that's what you'll be asked to adopt as we do this year's budget. So years 1 through 5 is what you've already approved. Of course, board's prerogative to move that if you choose. Year 6 is what you're gonna be adding on. So some of the highlights are we're kind of keeping that equipment transportation number around that 1.2 million mark. I will point out that this past year, we've got about 2 million. So even at 1.2 over the years 3 through 6 is probably low for paying for your graders, your dump trucks, most of our county vehicles, we budget in the regular budget. This is really your transportation trust-related thing. So Eric Pope, Sharice could talk more to that and what they're buying. We kind of kept the road improvements, so that's your dirt road paving, your resurfacing, your rejuvenation. We kept that flat at $11 million on the new year. And then we started adding other projects in where we think we can possibly start those projects, if those are the projects the board so chooses to do. This is what was in the original 10-year plan. All we did was show you that 6th year, because that's what you have to adopt. Any questions on the first before I go to the next slide?
I have a question. Stormwater. We have 400,000 this year, 0 the out years.
Perfect. Yes, sir. And that was a conversation that Sharice and I actually had. Thank you for bringing it back up. We have 400,000 in this year and 400,000 planned for next year. That is an issue. When we get to the unfunded project list, you'll see where we have a lot of stormwater projects that aren't funded. And we've said, on those, if you chose to implement a stormwater fee, they could be paid for with that. If you decide not to implement a stormwater fee, then you're gonna have to look at other places if stormwater is a priority.
Madam Chair, if I may. And Commissioner Renninger, piggybacking off your comment, the stormwater study said that we need to be operating at a $5 million budget for maintenance.
Right.
Not new projects, maintenance.
Right.
And furthermore, I think the thing that I can considerably worry about is when stormwater projects turn into other infrastructure. There's one right now currently in my district that's failing under a roadway. So that becomes what I would call a double negative, so.
Just to point that out, there's 0 in the CIP for stormwater. That's a problem. You can acknowledge it or ignore it, but it's a problem.
And again, next page, you kind of see where we're flowing these projects out. You will see the money that we're flowing between CIP and impact fees for parks. I know we haven't done those park projects and we keep pushing them out. I will remind the board that you only have 8 years to spend impact fee money from the time you receive it. So some of those park projects are gonna have to start moving forward because you're in year 4 right now of impact fees.
Go ahead.
You ready to leave? I need you to address equipment, public safety. There's 2 items about 3/4 of the way down or halfway down the page.
Yep.
Replacement.
So replacement is, I currently have engine 20. I'm just using that as an example, not saying that's the one we're replacing. It needs to be replaced, we buy a new engine 20.
So one's fire rescue and the other's
Both of those are fire
sheriff.
rescue, and the same thing happens to sheriff. I cannot use impact fees to replace a vehicle.
Right.
So the one line is replacement. I can use CIP dollars for that. Capacity improvement is I'm adding a new fire station. I need to add a new vehicle. I need to add a new apparatus that I don't currently have slotted. I'm gonna add a new whatever. That can be used, impact fees can be used that because you're expanding capacity. But once the capacity's there and it needs to come out of service, I gotta use CIP dollars, sales tax dollars to replace it.
But I guess I understand impact fees for expansion of
Yep.
services. But three-quarters of the way down, we have public safety, capital and vehicles replacement, but one specifies sheriff. What is the other one?
The first one, public safety, is fire rescue.
Okay, so that's
Yeah,
fire
and
rescue.
then the next two below, and the next two below that are the sheriff, so yeah.
I just wanted to clarify, that's fire rescue.
Yep, sorry.
Madam Chair. Troy, quick question about the 8-year impact fee schedule. Is that the project has to be signed, sealed, delivered, CO done in 8 years or initiated by the 8-year mark?
The way that I understand it, and I'll defer to Courtney, is whatever dollars you bring in have to be spent. That doesn't mean the project has to be completed, but if I bring in $1 million in year 1, by year 8, I have to spend that $1 million. So it's kind of like a revolving cycle because you're bringing in $1 million this year, $1.5 million next year, $1 million the year after that. So you have to spend it in that same, is that your understanding?
Okay.
And the key there is they have to be spent in the district. So really, for the most part, most of your money has been collected in the Lake Asbury, Green Cove Springs, southeast Clay, so that's kind of the Green Cove, Lake Asbury, really overlaps Commissioner Condon and Commissioner Burke's districts.
And the reason I bring that up is because the cost of building new infrastructure is so high that, you know, we may have to look at waiting until year 7 to have enough money to do something that's capacity increasing.
But what you can start doing is spending some of that money on your design.
Right.
Your, you know,
Right.
strategically spending the money. So it's, because most projects, as Mr. Dindor has taught me, you know, you spend a little bit of money up front and then they ramp up as you do the construction. So, but you could start spending that small amount of money to do the design, property acquisition if you have to, those kind of things.
Okay.
Before we leave this page,
Go ahead.
gun range. At one time, we enunciated that we'd try to get to self-sustaining gun range. How close are we? I mean, I see there's a little over $1 million for a gun range office.
That's operational. It's a
Well,
CRP.
well, but in CIP, there is $1 million in CIP, but to Howard's point, I don't know the numbers of whether it's, I'd have to pull those numbers for you to tell you whether it's operationally, whether it's sustaining itself or how close it is. I know it's not in the green, but how close it is, I'd have to
Alright.
pull those numbers.
All right, thank you.
Anything else on this? Okay. And then this is the last thing of everything that you've got built up. So really in year 6, you're looking at about $41 million in projects that are currently, if nothing changes, that's what we would recommend adding into your budget. Of course, that's the objective of today, is to start getting some of that guidance so that we can plan the CIP out and bring it to you for adoption. Moving past this, this is the start of the list of projects that are currently either underfunded or not funded in CIP. Most of these are not funded in CIP. And we've kind of put out there potential funding methods. So for example, the first 4 roads on the list are from my understanding through Richard, are the first 4 priority roads to be done with mobility fees. So right now you have, in year 6, I think you have about $20 million in impact fees or in mobility fees available across your districts. This is about $70 million in need. So your 5-year mobility fee plan as currently adopted wouldn't support you adding these new roads in. And I know you're hearing that tonight, so, you know, of whether you increase the mobility fee or not. If these roads are important or if there's other roads that are important, my point is over the next 5 years, your mobility fees are only gonna generate at the current rate about $20 million. And so you're not gonna be able to pay for any of these projects. And then the rest of the list, some of them, like I know, we kind of notated out, stormwater fee could pay for those. Sidewalks, we can use the sidewalk fund. Some of them, we've put voter improvement fund can be used. So we're kind of trying to show you where the different options for revenue is to spend as you're looking at your CIP. We want, you know, okay, yeah, this project's important and we can fund it somewhere else other than sales tax. So that was kind of the methodology that MJ and I worked on to kind of put together to show you how this money can be used in other places or how you can make that decision of what's important. I think that makes sense.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
Since I reviewed this last night, it was 196 million shortfall, now it's 371. Can you tell me where, you know, I just got this data 2 minutes ago, so.
As with anything, the departments are constantly, you know, we ask for information, they give us more information. The biggest one on here is really gonna be your IT side where, you know, as we grow in a county, you're gonna have to add a radio tower to the south end of the county. You're gonna have to replace your radio equipment. You're almost to the 10-year mark of your current Motorola system. I mean, that's a $52 million add towers, replace equipment. Not saying it all has to happen in 1 year, but again, trying to put the entire picture together for the next 5 years of these are the things your departments say that they're gonna need to do in the next 5 years to accomplish their goal, or the priority set by the board. And I think most of the department heads are here. I don't want to speak on their behalf, so if there's a specific question, we can get them up and ask that question.
And last comment I have or question I have is, I didn't see a new jail on the unfunded, and I don't think it's in the new list either. So what we're saying is that the renovation at the jail will accommodate Clay County for the next 5 years, is what I'm hearing.
I am not gonna say yes or no if that'll accommodate it. I don't run the jail. But I do think we're making improvements to add some beds. I would defer that to the sheriff's office. But more specifically of whether the improvements we're doing, they feel will last the next 5 years or not. And I'm getting sort of a head nod. So,
It's been an item of discussion, and it's a big ticket item too. So sooner or later, we're gonna have to address that,
yes, sir.
but hopefully it'll be after I'm gone.
But again, so, and I'm glad you brought that up, because again, next year, you're gonna have to do your impact fee study again. Because again, every year, 5 years.
Right.
So if that's a desire of the board, then we just need to make sure that gets put in the impact fee study. It was in the last impact fee study, not for a new jail, but for money to do renovations and things. So it would just be something that you would say, hey, that needs to be in the next impact fee study, and see what the fee comes out to be to do that.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead.
we just casually skipped past a $52 million radio site. And like, that's not on anybody's bingo card. Like, we haven't talked about that in the 5 years that I've been paying attention. So talk to me about that's a big deal. And it's a big deal for public safety, and I don't want to casually go past it. But what it's reminding me of here is that, like, I feel like we're about to have to put a new drain field at our house, and it's a big ticket item that we weren't planning on, and nobody's gonna even know when they come to our house.
I don't think this is a this year, next year need. I think it's in the 5 year, 6 year horizon, but I'll let Dean speak to it, or.
Yeah, but
Chief.
how can we even afford, like, we can't.
Well, so to that point, as Dean's coming up to speak about the radio system, I think that's where you may, and the school board's probably gonna come find me after this comment, you guys negotiated a contract with the school board to pay for their fair share of the radio system. And the board at the time decided that we only want to charge the school board half of that fee. It may be time to reevaluate that agreement. It's not a big revenue stream, but it's a revenue, and I think that's part of this conversation is we're gonna have to look at every one of those revenue streams and say, are we adequately charging for what the cost of business is, because they are a user of our system. So that's part of the answer.
Good morning, everyone. Dean Hain, Clay County MIS Director. I have some excellent news for y'all, and that I think this is a typo. It's 5.2 million for the site. okay?
Well done.
Now,
Nothing worse.
and I'm sorry, I
Could you
didn't
look
see
at the
this.
rest of the CIP for me,
Can you go
please?
put the,
We need to find a bunch of those.
So I'll caveat that on the flip side by some things that Troy's been laying the groundwork for in respect to public safety and our radio system, okay? We've met with Motorola many times over the last many months, sorting out how we're gonna handle this fiscal year and the 5-year plan. So as you well know, we have already completed the Keystone Tower replacement project, okay? We are well on our way to completing another tower project at Sleepy Hollow. We have now upgraded our microwave infrastructure as well. We have a project ongoing now to replace the brains of the system. We call it the controllers, okay? That's part of it. We have some things coming up on the horizon. I'm looking at our Motorola life cycle list here, right? So at some stage, all 4 PSAPs, public safety answering points, where 911 calls are answered and officers and firefighters are dispatched, they will need to have their radio consoles upgraded, okay? The things that the dispatchers use to talk on the radio. Those will need to be upgraded. At some stage, our, what we call the base stations, the actual radios at the sites, will need to be upgraded. Those are in, both of these items are in that 5-year plan here. Now, we don't have pricing for all of this yet, but we're working with Motorola on these. I think another element to the radio infrastructure and public safety, we gotta remember, so this is public safety livelihood. My background is public safety. I 100% 100% support this in the sense that we have fire rescue operating 7/24. We have the sheriff's office operating 7/24, Green Cove Springs PD, Orange Park PD, Orange Park Fire. As Troy mentioned earlier, we have an agreement with the school board for their buses to be on our system. We want those kids safe, right? There's all kinds of things that can happen to kids in school buses in this county. And so all that said, the landscape gets pretty big. When we went out to bid for this system in 2016, it had a 2-year warranty. So we prepaid for 10 years of maintenance in 2018. At the time we prepaid it, it was about $441,000 annually, okay? So 10 years, $4.4 million. So fast forward, 28 is when this is gonna need to be renewed, okay? Not this year, but not long afterwards. And so in the last 12 years, by the time that gets here, it'll be 12 years. We have done nothing but add to the system, okay? All the prices have gone up. Prices of components, software, hardware, and labor. So I think that 4.4 million over 10 years is gonna be low. Now, I'm not advocating that we buy 10 years in advance. The technology changes too fast for that. But we don't have a good funding model to support the needs of public safety. And I guess I'd add one other thing here, as long as I have a chance, is the radios, okay? So we've had these radios for, 10 years as of today. Some certainly die along the way. At some stage, they'll need to be replaced as well, okay? I'm not advocating a giant knife switch for that either, backing up a semi full of radios. But I do think we've got to have a plan, and it might include some roll down, right? We have some higher end stuff that is going to be nearing its end of life. We'll get end of life notices from Motorola pretty soon. And so that doesn't mean the radios will stop working, okay? But at some stage when they break, they won't be repairable. At some stage, the manufacturers will stop making batteries for the portables, for instance, right? And we're going to have to make a change. So this is part of technology. We see it all the time with laptop servers, cybersecurity. Technology has a life cycle. And we've stretched this one here pretty good so far. We're grateful about that, but we need to be planning. This is perfect, right? We need to be planning for the next set of life cycle in public safety. So I think that covers most of what I wanted to talk about here today. I'm happy to answer any questions you guys might have with the information I have today.
Yeah, Dean, you spoke of cost sharing with school board. Do we have cost sharing with Green Cove, Orange Park?
We do not.
It's zero?
That's correct. Yep. We treat them as public safety partners. It was part of, kind of the deal when the county went to the new system in 2016.
Thank you.
Madam Chair. Go ahead. So, Dean, I hear you. I value public safety. Please don't don't take anything but in the computer world, it used to be everybody, it was $1,200 to go buy a new computer. And now you can buy a faster, better, stronger computer, smaller too, because I go back that far, for $300. So I feel like I would like to see as you go forward and the planning for this, that we don't just automatically say, we're married to this, we're locked in, we have so much equipment, so much, and I've expressed this to Troy. My frustration is getting higher and higher to where everything seems in public safety is sole source. And you and I have had this conversation about software. Everything is sole source. Everything is we bought into this system, so we have to stay with this vendor, and we have to stay with this, and then how do we know that the next best thing isn't out there because we haven't gone and looked, because we're still maintaining the dinosaur system? And so I would just ask you that as you go forward with this, it's a really big deal, because we're getting hit from the state to say, wait, you've grown your budget by 50%, right? We all have heard it. And everybody in the public says, Doge needs to come into our county and look at our budgets. Well, you don't have to look further than why our budget's gone up to listen to what you just said. What a radio system cost 10 years ago is exponentially more today, but we cannot sustain that because we're using tax dollars. So somehow we have to find a way to meet the service standards of the public and the needs of the public safety, fire, and sheriff's office efficiently, best in class. Like, I don't want any of them out there thinking, I hope this radio communicates with home base. I mean, that's the last thing that should ever cross their mind. However, is it the best that we can do without, and at the same time, not reinventing the wheel every year or every time this comes up? So if you can just start, and it's got to be more than one line item, right? Because we look at it as, okay, so, and we'll leave it on here because it's unfunded, but Motorola, a new additional radio site, 52 million, whether it's 5 million or 50 million, you've got enough projects that probably are 50 million, but are they really? And tell us, give us those details so that we can make those assumptions. And let's just not keep doing because we've always done and we're comfortable with. And if it's the right thing to do, that's fine. But we often do, or we wait till the last minute, and I'm just using this as an example because it was the last thing we talked about. We didn't realize the contract was coming up or it changed hands, and so we're out of time. So if we looked, and I know that's crossing from public safety into public works, but if we had time, we would have done something different, but we don't have time, and so now we have to continue on with this contract. It just gets frustrating.
We are 100% in alignment. We
Okay.
feel the same way. And mind you, it's across the IT landscape, many different vendors. And in our world today, it's moving fast. You talked about PCs, for instance. I'll sidetrack just a moment there. We met with our supplier late last week, PCs, laptops. The cost of those are going up, and it's being driven by other market forces that we don't have any control of, meaning the AI farms, okay? The cost of memory in a PC is going up. The cost of processors in PCs are going up. The cost of storage is all going up. We run a lot of PCs. We run a lot of servers. And so the money we had budgeted for this fiscal year is going to buy us less than last year because of these external market forces. Sometimes, as you mentioned, we get the squeeze. I do, if you don't mind, I'll go back to the Motorola thing and the pricing thing. One thing I would like to point out is that when we work with them, I think our team does a good job of working through things with them. We have experience, right? It's not blind trust. And so as an example, when we negotiated the replacement of the controllers, we got a $500,000 discount through that process. So that's some savings, right? We're working very hard at hawking our budget, I guess to say. But my point here is to let everyone know that there are some infrastructure items in the public safety world that are coming around and they're high dollar. And we should all be wary of getting the call from, first responders, from PSAPs, hey, something went wrong and somebody got hurt, right? But there, like you mentioned, Commissioner Condon, there is a process for that. Anything else?
And I want to comment, to comment on Commissioner Condon. We need to look for efficiencies. We have PSAPs that we don't need. We need to look at that and seriously save some money here in the county. This is county money we're talking about. And maybe this frees up money for cost sharing of some of the infrastructure that some of these PSAPs that are being used, they can replace the money they spend on PSAP with cost sharing on infrastructure. So we need to look at that.
I think there's opportunity for those conversations, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. There have been opportunities for a long time. Nobody wants to have them, but seriously, we need to start looking at this stuff. This is not inexpensive throwaway money. I mean, it's big bucks.
There are, yes, sir. Yep.
Yeah, I would say on everything. So,
Yeah.
we went to Workday for efficiency, but we pay a ton of money to Workday. How many employees do we have who have to access a computer to clock in? And maybe read email because we've become that society, but is that really the best thing that we can do for with the taxpayer dollars? If they don't really, like, the old-fashioned time clock worked fine for decades. Now, they didn't have computers, I get it, but then, so I guess those are the things that I hope that we're looking at because they are tax dollars and we're not just a private business. We need to operate more in some ways like a private business, but then we also have to make sure that we're not doing things because they make somebody's life easier, that we are doing things so that people can do their job, right? I mean, I've talked to some of our employees out in the field that are like, computers aren't my thing, but Public Works is, or, or operating this piece of equipment is, but yeah, I don't, so those just efficiencies is great.
The last comment I have is I cringe every time I hear end of life. Okay, I bought a 98 Dodge Durango and I just sold it 28 years later. And of course, my wife said it was end of life 10 years ago. But you know what? It's still on the road. So if you maintain, there are some systems, you have batteries and auxiliary equipment, you can't get them anymore. But then again, there's secondary markets for things as such. So I just cringe every time I hear end of life. We got to get rid of it because it's end of life. Well, my computer at home is 12 years old, and it's not at its end of life. But I'm updating it. But 12 years is a long time. So anyway,
I think that's a great conversation, sir. So when we say end of life, MIS, right? And the strategic plan. Our connection to support the strategic plan is clearly laid out in there, right? That we're not going to have infrastructure that's 1 year past end of life. Now, that's where we get into the philosophical discussion of what is end of life. Is it not supported, or did the thing go dark? So, as part of the next, this budget cycle that we're in, we're already talking out there stretching end of life because of the funding, right? I mean, does the machine work? Yeah. Are we still, security's a thing for us. And so we still have to make sure the security and the patches are done there. The Windows 10 to Windows 11 switch was noticeable. But your point is well taken. I mean, and we look at that as we talked last week. I think the cutting of certain number of licenses for software applications save us $66,000. We're going through our telecommunications bills. We got another $3,000 a month. We're getting rid of for telecommunications, and so we very much hear you. Our department does, and it's big, it's dynamic, but it takes work, and so you should know that we're putting in the work.
thank you.
Anything else? All right, very good. Thank you.
So I will say that myself and the budget office met with the sheriff's department's new CFO, who happens to be in the room. And I think this was the very first question he asked me is, how do we pay for radio system? So it's on their radar, it's on our radar. I apologize for the typo in the documents, but I think it's somewhere between $5 million for the new site, which is what this was intended to be. And as you've heard Dean, we've got maintenance and we've got other things that we're gonna have to pay for. So it's somewhere between 5 and 50. So again, I apologize for the typo.
If you hadn't made the typo, we wouldn't have had a good
Right,
conversation.
perfect. That was all the plan. No.
Just to make sure we read it, right?
Yep. But this is the unfunded list. If there's anything else you'd like to talk about, if not, I think really that's what we had to present to you today from the budget office.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes.
And so moving forward from this, we've talked to you, each of you individually on this, and then as we're in this budget cycle in making the normal budget and making the CIP budget, if you want to split them in those two categories, on this, we're up for comments today or moving into the future. But there will come a time where we'll have to solidify the CIP. based upon the revenues that were projected coming in and the board's priorities that are on there. I asked Troy to really just highlight that 5th year that's there. We also have years 6 through 10, which will also be out there that, as we capture that in the projects that are out there that we don't have the money for, we've gone that way to capture those on the list. I would say one other thing on this too. They also asked Justin for Parks and Rec to put his projects on this list also. So Commissioner Reniger, the other amounts came from Parks and Rec too. So it was MIS and Parks and Rec that are on there. And if you would like to hear from Justin, he's out here, he can address some of those things. If you'd like, it's a desire of the board. And then really just moving forward, if there's something today that you feel strongly about, please let us know. But know that each week as we move forward in producing the budget here, especially on the CIP side, we're up for other suggestions and what you would like to do or have. And if there's like an idea of adding something, well, then there's a trickle effect, right, for it. It migrates down those 5 years. So we just need to know what that is so that we can cost it out, right, over the 5 years. And that's extremely important. I think that's it. And again, I don't know if you'd like to hear from Justin on
I'd like
it.
to hear from Justin.
Okay.
And I know Parks and Rec, along with everyone, took a big hit our last budget, and I know there was so much that Justin did not get to get done that he had really been wanting to, that we needed. So if you could address that, Justin.
Oh, you can continue to preach, Commissioner. I love everything you're saying there. Justin Pierce, Director of Parks and Rec. If you all recall, back in 2024, we conducted a park system master plan that was a comprehensive study of our entire park system, level of gaps, to anticipate the growth of the county, as well as our current infrastructure and park system, and those equity standards of what a park in one area may look like versus another. So with all of that data that was gathered in November of '24, the Parks Master Plan was adopted, and it was a 6 to 10 year, almost CIP recommended improvement list, which you can see here on that board, of what the recommendations for the level of service growth, which includes expansion in new parks to meet those level of service gaps, but as well as bringing our current parks up to the recommended equity standards that was presented in the Parks Master Plan. And since then, I've been working with our Capital Improvements Department as well as our Facilities Department of looking at what projects may be Boulder Improvement Fund qualifying or impact fee qualifying. So I can go through a kind of a bullet point list of the top 2 or 3 that falls in each commissioner and impact fee district if you would like. But everything you see represented there are the 40 plus recommendation of the park system master plan improvements to get our current parks up to standard, but also anticipate the growth of the county and to meet those standards and stay above them as we grow our county.
So you have the top 2 from each district that we said?
For the impact fee districts, I can kind of go over there quickly. So for District 1, currently we have 2 properties that are deeded park properties that are currently underdeveloped, well, not developed currently, and that's Antler Run Park, Commissioner Condon in your district, and Marcus Lane, which is just west of Main Street Boat Ramp. So those are 2 parcels that are not developed currently, so the parks plan to meet those level of standards where to develop those within the 6 to 10 year range in Antler Run, as well as Marcus Lane. And currently in CIP, we have Main Street Boat Ramp improvements. So we're currently working with capital improvements for designs, but the recommended improvements, we don't have funding currently in CIP for the
I don't see
construction.
this on here.
What?
Where is that?
It's not listed, he's just telling you what's
I'm
in
just telling you some of the projects that we have and how they kind of fit
what
with
that
the
44,000
impact
would go
fees.
to, yeah.
On the unfunded list.
Unfunded,
Yeah, they're on the unfunded list.
Oh, I see
yeah,
it.
because-
I found it.
Because
Sorry.
they're unfunded because the board hasn't said, yes, that's your priority.
Yep.
So
Okay.
right now they're unfunded.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
All right, and District 2, Moccasin Slough Boardwalk, we do have that project moving, but there are future phases of that. So estimated, we're looking at around $8 million to complete that project for the boardwalk. So again, impact fees may qualify to move that project forward, as well as the Nature Center, which is part of the FCT master plan, as well as Doctors Lake site improvements, sir, and new playgrounds at Plantation Sports Complex and Neptune were some of the priorities in District 2 impact fees. So any questions with that before moving on to 4? Saratoga Springs, that was a deeded property that we have as part of the impact fee credits. So developing that park, which is off of Sand Ridge Road, and that's roughly around $3.8 million. We have the land, but the development, the designs of that. So that's priority number 1, ma'am. Boyd Park, which is on the southern portion of Green Cove Springs. That's also a deeded property that we had since 1995, if I'm not mistaken. And to develop that, that could be a nice nature park with boardwalks over the wetlands. So that's another $2.4 million project that we would have to design and construct. And the time range for that is 26 through 28, as well as the Saratoga Springs. And the Parks Master Plan also calls for another community park in District 4 within the 6 to 10 year range, which will run around 7.8, 7.9 million. And when I say community park, that's anything that's over 10 acres. So when you think Neptune, you think Omega Park, you think ball fields, large scale parks that brings multiple neighborhoods together, as opposed to your pocket parks and your neighborhood parks, which are under the 5 acre range. And then the last two, we're looking at a new community park in the Oakleaf area. That's around 8.5 million, and that's 6 to 10 years out, as well as continuing to grow the Oakleaf Community Park Phase 2, and that's another 4.2 million, and that's within designing in 5 years and constructing 6 to 10. And then District 7, we are currently working with our capital projects team to design Lake Geneva and Lake Brooklyn site improvements. But once those designs are completed, the construction, which will include parking expansion, restroom, as well as a pier boardwalk, are all phased within the short, mid, and long-term range. So having that funding source to prepare for that once designs are complete. And then it also calls for 2 community parks in the southern portion of Clay County as well. And so that's land acquisition, design, and construction. So any questions? Well, that was a lot of information, but.
What about all the slashing of all the lighting and everything? That you just talked about that.
Well, we have in the CIP, we have lighting for Twin Lakes Park. A lot of it can also be budgeted for in our operation. So when you talk about Ronnie Van Zant lighting project, I want to say the quotes were around 95 to 100K. So that was something that I will budget for in our project list through our operating, not, excuse me, CIP. But Twin Lakes, since that's a large scale project and they will be adding new lights that doesn't currently exist, that's on the CIP list. And I want to say that's like around $1.3, $1.4 million project, as well as Walter Odom lighting, since those are large scale lighting projects. But lighting our courts and things, the ones that we've done with our pickleball courts, have come out of our operating budget, not our CIP budget.
So why do I see zeros all the way across? Am I thinking of this wrong?
Because there's no money allocated to it in your CIP at this point in time.
Okay, but that was my question. So
that would be a board decision if you wanted to allocate CIP dollars for that, but you can't use impact fees for that because you're not expanding capacity by adding lights, so it would have to come out of your sales tax. So then again, it would be board's priority of.
Well, I thought that was the whole reason I wanted him to come up,
Yeah.
because all this was slashed last year. So we're not even thinking about getting to the point where we can get anything back,
That would be,
you know.
that would be
so.
up to the 5 of you to decide what other project you would want to delay, defer, or eliminate to free up that money to pay for that lighting. Currently in the CIP.
Lighting was just an example.
Well, no, I'm just saying,
talking
but,
everything that was
but
slashed around.
most of what was removed from the budget or deferred in Justin's budget last year are CIP repairs and replacements. So so that would have to be a decision of the board to do the lighting or do another project. What would you eliminate or what would you defer out of your CIP into year 5 or 6 or 7? And that's really what the discussion to start today was this is your current CIP. If you want to do, and I'm just going to use the lighting as an example, okay, when do you want to slot the lighting in? And in slotting that lighting in, something else has to give.
I mean, we can't even get to unfunded. We can't even get to, I mean, this is like
And that's why.
$20 million, like, no.
And I think that's why there's the two sides of the conversation was, how do you become more efficient, as Commissioner Condon pointed out, how do you do things more efficiently? And then I think the other side of it is, are there other revenue streams that you can bring in, such as stormwater fee or your mobility fees, to help offset some of the cost of sales tax? Because that's what those things will do if that's the desire of the board.
And Troy, I wanted to chime in, kind of just one example of what he's alluding to, is if you see the Lake Geneva and Lake Brooklyn site improvements, we currently have boater improvement funds to fund the designs, but I'll work with Megan and her team to go for a FWC grant to fund the construction, and if so, then that's a project that could be offset through boater improvement funds as opposed to our CIP budget. So we're looking at all of those options and working with Troy and his team to try to find those different avenues of funding sources.
Troy, how come lighting doesn't impact or increase capacity? Because you can play more.
When we did our impact fee study, now that's something the board can definitely change in the next impact fee study, but the last impact fee study was tied 100% to the planning land development code, which is what's your number of fields, number of acres. Lighting was not considered part of that as part of the impact fee study that we did last time.
Yeah, well, we totally missed the boat on that.
Our first attempt at it, and yeah, we missed it as an allowable item.
So
Because
that's next year we're able to,
next year, we're gonna start the study at the end of this year, because you're required to do it every 5 years. So we'll start the study probably August, September, and next year you'll hear that. So that would be something that we'll make a note of and see if the consultants, how they feel about that.
Yeah, I mean, I totally think that because it's infrastructure, you're at, lights are, to me, lights make more sense than, I guess you could go add a field, but to me, a light makes more sense than a lot of things because it's adding infrastructure and it allows more play.
I think if we were adding a new field, because you're increasing capacity, and we did the lightings as part of the new field, I think you'd be fine. I think you're in a great, and I'll.
Because here's the problem with it. And we go back to my days as a president of a baseball softball association. So frustrating, right? So frustrating because so you can go build a new park for the new people who've all moved to town that we're trying to be friendly to because we're Clay County and we're friendly, but okay, we're there. And yet, so they get the nice new, but the parks that have been there for 30 years don't get anything. And listen, we can say we know what the law says in the state statute. I had that conversation with parents last night. Sharice, did I not? So it's.
I understand, but being on the same side, being a previous president of an association and coaching at those, I've coached at 3 or 4 of those ball fields that don't have lighting over the time, but it's something Courtney and I can look into and dig into the study, but that was my understanding of the study, is that because we tied it so tightly to our land development code, it had to be tied to increasing the number of playable fields and things, but we'll take a look at it, see if there's any wiggle.
good idea, I think.
I'm all about it if we can figure it out.
Anything else, Justin?
Unless you have any more questions for me. All right, thank you.
Thank you so much.
I want to go back to the revenue side and the gas tax. We have mobility fees, we have impact fees, we have BTP, we're growing like crazy, and yet the gas tax is static. What we're ignoring is inequity of electric vehicles versus conventional, gas-powered vehicles. And I know this is bigger than Clay County, but other states have addressed this problem. We haven't, and yet we just accept it. That's okay. I don't think it is okay. I think we need to do something, whether it be engage our delegation for Tallahassee to, other than the flamingo being a new state bird, do something that's really meaningful.
We did talk about that with them, so nothing's come up. There's nothing in there at all.
Other states have implemented a use fee for electric vehicle license plate, a registration fee. We have not, and yet we're suffering because of that.
Madam Chair, I got two.
Asphalt doesn't remain static, okay? When you go to fill a pothole, it's gonna cost more in the out years, and yet the gas tax doesn't cover it. Doesn't cover it today, not predicted to cover it in the future. And I don't think we're okay with that is the right answer.
Madam Chair, I got 2 points along with the electric vehicle usage. 2 questions. Number one, and if you don't, it's okay. what is the percentage of electrical vehicle usage in Clay? Do we know, or can we find out?
I don't know if that's something that, Diane's office may have, for vehicle registration. I mean, we can ask.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I'd
have
love
no
to
idea.
know that if you can find that out. How much electric vehicles are actually being used in Clay County? And the second thing, is there any current revenue? Like, do we have any charging stations that are owned by the county?
The only ones that we had that were owned by the county were put in by the TPO, and they ended up costing us more money to repair them and keep them up and current than we were making off of them. They were at the Fleming Island Library.
Okay.
So
So we
they
don't,
have
we
since-
currently make $0 off electrical vehicles.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
But no matter what with the electric vehicles, how many come through our county that aren't paying for, that aren't, going towards our roads, and so, I mean, but yeah, at least to know who lives here, I guess, would
Mhm.
be good, yeah.
And one misnomer about the gas tax is it's not like the sales tax where it's a percentage of the sale. It's by the gallon. So the price of gas going up doesn't affect how much money you're getting in. So that's a misnomer that the public has, is that this is like sales tax. So, oh, it's $3 a gallon, now you're getting more. We're still getting the same number of pennies off of a gallon of gas, whether it's $2 a gallon or $10 a gallon.
Madam Chair, it's, I hesitate to say only $250,000, but it's $250,000. So on our CIP, in next year's budget, there's $250,000 that is to JTA bus shelter improvements.
I already highlighted that.
And, I'd like to see that go to stormwater. I don't know, I understand it's a workshop and we can't take action, but maybe if we could have consensus to give
Consensus, yeah.
direction. I just, we could talk about the usage of JTA and bus shelters at a different time on the
Where is that,
agenda.
just on 220, or?
I don't
where
really
else?
remember.
It was part of the overall study when they came in a couple years ago and said, hey, we need to do these improvements to promote bus. They asked us to put $250,000 in, and it's been one of those things, we slotted it out in year 3, 4, 5, and it's just moved forward.
We have bus shelters, though?
No, that was what they were planning on building, was bus shelters. So it's just one of those things that move forward. One of the things that we had looked at, for bus sheltering and that specific topic is, there was an approach on College Drive of somebody saying, hey, if we give the county, donate to the county, can we put up a bus shelter? Well, that's what we put in the last contract with the people that do our advertising. So if somebody wants to donate for a bus shelter, we can do that. So
Yeah, like the guy who does the benches.
That's
Yeah,
what it's about.
it was actually in his contract that we can do shelters
yeah.
through him now.
Yeah, I mean, I can honestly say in 5.5 years, I've never had anybody tell me they'd really like to see a shelter at one of our
Bus stops.
JTA Clay Transit bus stops.
No.
So I'm assuming that was consensus to kind of remove that item off.
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
And I'd specifically agree with the part of, you said road resurfacing.
I said actually stormwater.
Stormwater? Okay, yeah, same important need. I'm good with that too.
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
if I may, so the luxury of computers, to answer Commissioner Squamala's question about EVs, based upon the Florida Highway Safety Motor Vehicle data, there are 5,498 hybrid, electric and gas hybrids. Electric only are 2,372 for a grand total of 7,870. And then using the Florida Insurance Portal, the number of registered vehicles within Clay County is over 185,000, specifically 185,428. If you do the math, it's 2.96% are EV. With hybrids, it's 4.2%.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
May I ask another question, Madam Chair? So on the, they're not numbered, but on the page for the CIP that has multi-agency storage warehouse, which I wholeheartedly support, we have design of the $500,000 this year. We have construction, which is right around $2 million-ish next year. Then we skip a year and that with nothing, and then we have the $500,000. Do we need to adjust, or is that when we were trying to make it balance?
Yeah, and so really what we're gonna do, as we move forward with the public safety complex. There's several items on here, so if you look down the list of multi-agency warehouse, and then I think up above is the sheriff's office, public safety, training facility. What we've talked about is combining all of that into a public safety complex budget, so that, and then bringing the pieces to the board, but that way it's not spread across 7 or 10 different line items. It'll be really spread across 4. It'll be CIP funding, impact fee fire funding, impact fee law enforcement, and impact fee admin funding will be the 4 things, because the warehouse supports more than just public safety. It'll support the admin functions of the county. So as we fine tune this and the public safety complex becomes more of a reality, we'll kind of combine all that into the budget to make it easier to understand. But yes, ma'am, I think that was just a budget tool to move it out, to keep the total amount in the budget so it didn't get lost.
Got it. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so what's our next step?
I mean, from our perspective, it's really just as you look at this and give feedback, we'll bring a list of changes as we go through the budget adoption process. I mean, this will be adopted as part of your normal budget cycle. You know, we'll be working, you know, hand in hand with public safety and the sheriff's office, because like, I know the sheriff's office vehicles in this budget are light compared to what their actual need is. So we'll be looking to fine tune those numbers. You know, with the new CFO being on board, you know, we had our initial meeting. We'll keep working through that. We'll work with public safety to make sure we have their numbers and their replacement cycle in there. Work with Eric and his team to make sure his replacement cycle is in there, because of course, without the equipment, it's hard to do their job. But and then any feedback you have of, hey, add this project, cut this project, move this project out, we'll take and kind of put all of it together and hopefully bring you a CIP back to adopt.
And then at our next, the general budget workshop, June 9th, that we'll kind of have that fine tune.
Yeah, the June 9th one will be really where we work through with you where we're at on the budget at that point. There's some discussion on the April 28th because, as you know, the legislature may or may not be wrapped up by then. So we'll work through the county manager and through the chair to say whether we have that post-legislative workshop or do we roll that into the June one or move it to May. And then, of course, max millage workshop will be July 21st, which is the key because that's when you're going to, you know, that's our last chance to have a discussion before you guys vote on max millage. But the June 9th meeting will be really where we bring your operational budget to you and where we're at for operational. Anything you want to add?
Right.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, that's really it. I think the team's done a wonderful job putting it all together. It can get quite overwhelming. We have focused on that 5th year, like I mentioned before, and then taking a look at these revenue streams. There are things as we move forward in the BCC meetings ahead that we're going to bring up tonight, as a matter of fact, for mobility fees. And then a future one will also have stormwater, as mentioned. So those are some decisions to be made based upon the board's desire and pleasure. Off of those, we can make adjustments to this and fund things differently, or it maintains the same. So pending any questions, really that's all we have. And I think the last thing would be just commissioner comments, but that was it.
Maybe you have anything?
I'm going to highly recommend Dean scrutinize the budget further. He's done a great job.
All right, Commissioner Ware, do you have anything?
No, just a thank you to staff for putting this together and keeping us informed.
Thank you. Commissioner Condon?
Yeah, I would agree with Commissioner Compare. I mean, it is daunting, the list of unfunded projects, but I think it's good to take a look at it. I like the large print, these old eyes, but there's a lot we can't do, but the efficiencies, but I would say to the public, and maybe we didn't go through it line by line, but what I think is important for the public to know is that we've really put that focus on public safety. We all, maybe the reason there's not a whole lot of conversation about it is because we're all kind of in agreement that we did salaries 3-4 years ago, and those are going well to get our staff to the point where we weren't the revolving door, especially with the sheriff's office and the fire department. Needed to stop that. Last year, we did the bond program for the fire station, so we've all been kind of in agreement that the sheriff's office is next to address those infrastructure needs. And so trying to balance public safety as our priority, but also to maintain all of the services that the public expects from us. And so this is not the most exciting conversation. Certainly hasn't been as in-depth as last month's workshop when we talked about the general revenue fund, because we have more flexibility in that, although a lot less money. But at any rate, I just think I think it's good to focus on public safety. We've needed to do that for probably decades in our county, so we can get some of these needs addressed, but while we still meet the needs of the other things. Stormwater's just as not sexy as a radio tower, right? I mean, these are things that you don't walk out of your house and go, oh, that street is really nice to drive on, but they're just as important. So that's all I would say. But thanks, and thank you to staff.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so a couple things that I want to just, kind of give the public some context to regarding the budget. Because I think that if you're a first time attendee and you're sitting listening to this meeting, you might think, well, there's not really much going on. And I think that the thing that we all have to remember is these are the leanest of times that we've had since 2008. And I think that as a citizen, I sit and think, well, I'm paying more property tax than I ever have. I'm paying, all these fees, X, Y, Z. But the reality is you realize that in the state of our economy, when you go to the grocery store, you're still paying more. When you go to the gas pump, you're still paying more. The economy has not regulated in that aspect, and public government is not exempt from that either. And that's the important part. Post-COVID, public governments were flush with federal cash. And I remember just in my first year of being a commissioner, these budget workshops were vastly different because we were seeing the end of that residual federal money being spent. So a lot of these like to have projects, we were actually getting to debate because there was still federal money to spend on those. And all of those are gone. And I think it's very important for the five of us to remember in these types of economic times, one of the things that is tough right now, being in this seat with all of us, is we hear all the time about 10 years ago, well, we gave, the commission gave a discount on these fees, or there was a negotiation for this project, and those days are over. I mean, the discounts are over, the being the nice county, it has to be over, because for us to ensure that we're putting our county in the best position to succeed well after all five of us are gone, we have to make these tough decisions. And there's a couple things that have to happen. We have to diversify our revenue. Just because we have not, gained revenue from a certain source historically doesn't mean that now is not the time to diversify those revenues. Reduce expenditures. We talk about that all the time. Speaking of expenditures, in a brief that I was in Friday, we're doing CDBG is doing 3,500 feet, so 3,500 feet of sidewalk for just under $600,000. So think about that. So when you look at those impact and mobility fees that are maybe 80 grand, one stretch of 3,500 feet of sidewalk is almost $600,000, to put things into perspective. Not to mention, the last thing I want to say is our goal of laser focusing on the blocking and tackling of public government. And as Commissioner Condon said, police, fire, roads, stormwater infrastructure. At this point, all the other stuff is a nice to have. And because we're getting to the point where we don't have the revenues to ensure that those essentials are fully covered, right? So we'll continue fighting for it, continue having some robust discussions, but there's some tough decisions that we're going to have to make to, once again, ensure not that we're okay for the next 5 years, but we're okay well after we're out of office. So that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, staff. I think we've had a great discussion, and we have a lot of work ahead of us going through this and trying to figure out what we're gonna do. We do have some tough decisions. I think about stormwater issues, 440,000 in the budget, but we've been told we need to have about 5 million in the budget. Stormwater issues aren't a big deal until it's in your backyard, and so we can all think about, Moody Avenue, it wasn't near me, and so everyone else in the county yeah, it sounded really horrible, but it wasn't right next to me. And so when it happens, we want to know that we're going to be able to take care of that. And, radio equipment, isn't a big deal until you have to call 911, until your loved one is in danger of dying. And so we have to know that we know that everything's going to be okay when those things happen. And that's on us. We have to make those decisions to make sure it's taken care of. I think, we have this year talking about property tax going away and, just so many things that we have to decide what is going to be the most important and make those decisions that we may have to put more out there because the money's going to have to come from somewhere. So anyway, I look forward to the next few months, and I know that we're going to do the best we possibly can. And if that is all for the good order, we will adjourn.